Hi, in this episode I'll be talking to Marc Payne, an Abalone diver and shark conservationist. Over a brew, Marc tells me about his encounters with great white sharks whilst he dives for abalone for a living in southwest Australia, and how he's found undiscovered shipwrecks and settlements from way back when. Do you fancy a brew?
How's it going, mate?
Hey.
Busy man then?
Yeah, flat out. Did racing motorbikes all weekend, and then my boy's birthday today, and we had to travel a long way, so sorry about that.
It's alright, mate. It's
Yeah.
alright.
I'll just put this on silent. My dad's trying to ring me flat out. My dad was an abalone diver in the 70s.
Yeah. So is your boy going to take that off from you, do you think?
Oh, I don't. No, he reckons I'm crazy.
Well,
does that?
I guess it's up for debate, that, isn't it? You've got to earn a living, and if it's what you know, innit? And it's just how you make it work.
Exactly.
I'm in the same boat, really. My daughter works for me, but doesn't want to take it on, and doesn't want to reach. She's no passion or drive for it, which upsets me a little bit. But I've not got that passion either for it. Diving is number one for me. If I can make that pay, that'd be fantastic. We'll see. So, Marc Payne, welcome to Fancy a Brew podcast, mate. Obviously, I did a bit of a reach out a couple of weeks ago to try and get a few guests on, and you were the one that shouted up. Unfortunately, I'd never heard of you, but when I said to you, why would I want to talk to you? And you came back with this list of stuff, I thought, yeah, need to talk to Marc. He sounds really exciting in what he does, not only for a living, but looks like a bit of a passion that's sort of close to your heart, with your dad sort of passing that on to you. So if you can give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, and then we'll see where we go.
Yeah, great to meet you, Andy. I'm actually a second generation abalone diver. I was brought up in Queensland on the Barrier Reef, and when I was about 5 years old, I was free diving about 8 metres, with my uncle. So my whole life has been around the ocean. My parents went up and travelled around Australia. We ended up in a place called Port Lincoln, which is now where they do the shark cage tourism. But at that time, my dad was really interested in diving. He was trying to get an abalone licence. This is back in 1977. And there wasn't a licence available, so we hitched up the camping gear and we travelled all the way across Nullarbor, which is what we call the Great Australian Bight in Australia, and ended up in a little town called Esperance. And my dad bought an abalone licence for not much money back then, and started diving, and then I become a child growing up in a fishing community in a small town. So we spent a lot of time around the ocean. That was basically where we lived and what we did. And my father was a real adventurer. He did a lot of early research stuff. He dived the Great Australian Bight for the first time. So there was a lot involved in me as a child, and also experiencing some of the traumas my dad went through as a child, which affected me. And I think it could have turned me one way or the other, but it drove me towards pursuing diving as a career.
I've never come across an abalone. I don't know what one is until me and you started speaking, and I had to have a look. So how it appears to me is it looks like what we would call a limpet, as in it's got like a foot and it sort of mooches around, a bit like a snail, but doesn't appear to come out of its shell. Am I right in thinking that's what I've found out it is?
I think you're right. It's just got one shell. It's a mollusk. It's got like the biggest muscle in the whole world out of any animal, and it just lives on the seafloor and it eats seaweed. And we've got to work out how we can get down there and catch these abalone. And I guess if you look at technical diving, abalone, we tend to break the rules a bit because we're trying to get maximum bottom time and maximum performance. So we're pushing our bodies to the max, we're pushing our cardio and everything, which goes against quite often what the rule book is. Because we're trying to make money.
Do you find your own physical fitness relates to how easy you find your job then?
Yeah, well, a lot of the guys that have let their health go have fell out of the industry because it just gets a bit hard for them. Yeah. So I think your personal health and your personal fitness plays a big role in this industry. As you get older, you get a little bit more wisdom and you do slow a bit. That's fine. You're not the top gun anymore, so you start dropping down the ladder as time goes on. The young guys come in and they just push the limits. So that's just life.
Is that why you got your wet sub to help you sort of get around a little bit quicker?
The wet sub we call it the cage over here. Yeah. So when I first started abalone diving, I just dived on what we call a hooker system, which is basic diving, and we just swam around picking abalone using our fins. Then we moved on to things like nitrox and to try and get more bottom time. And we moved on to your electric Apollo type scooters, so we can drive around on them, the battery operated ones.
Yeah.
But during that time, the cage, what we call the shark cage, is starting to develop. So first of all, they started on a pneumatic one, which was air operated, and then they move on to the hydraulic version. So my dad was part of developing that technology back in the late 70s and the early 80s. And now it's become part of our job. So I guess if you look at technical diving, we sort of have to design everything we do around our job because it's different, and you just have to develop these tools. And of course, we got the white sharks, and when I first started diving, I didn't have that many interactions, and over time it gets more and more. Then my dad says, "Boy, this is getting way too dangerous. I'm getting worried about you." So then we really start to nut down how we're going to design equipment so we can. It's not just about the sharks. It's more about we can just put our head down, look at what we're doing, turn our back on that environment, and just get the job done.
I suppose you've not got that third person or second, but like your buddy system, have you? You've not got someone watching your back going, "Yeah, someone's creeping up on you now." So with that cage, it just adds you that level of protection, and you can just sort of get on with it, like you said.
Yeah, well, I guess when I do dive courses, it's always about teamwork, and I spend a lot of time by myself underwater because we don't have anyone around. We have one guy up on the surface and one guy on the bottom. We have little communication things happening, and my cage has got backup air supply. It's got everything in it. It's like a golf buggy. You just go around, you put your lunch in there, whatever you want, So we use all these tools to get that job done.
Mm-hmm.
So doing the job you do, have you had any sort of close calls while you've been in the water?
So have you sort of come across anything? Have you been bent? Is basically what I'm trying to ask.
I guess being an abalone diver, you go through every single thing, so you basically get everything. So
right.
Well, I guess we try to push the boundary lines of everything because we're trying to make money. Yeah. So I've had everything from bow barra traumas to multiple bends to oxygen toxicity, nitrogen narcosis, near drownings multiple times, nearly been eaten multiple times. So then you just learn, I guess, I guess the trick is things like predisposing factors with physiology. So, we learn how to dive, we learn the rule book, we learn what is the standard, and then we sort of work out how we can break those rules a little bit to make a few more dollars.
Okay.
For example, just diving on normal air, I'd probably do some days I'd do 7 decompression dives to 27 metres in a day. And occasionally you come up and you get something like itchy skin rash or you get an ache in your shoulder. And then as you waited more time on the surface, that ache could get worse and worse. So what we do is we jump back in the water, go down and pressurise again, and it goes away. And then we work out how we can get back to the surface again, and then try and recompress back out of that. So we got oxygen and a few tools.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we don't stop working. So once we solve that problem, we go back down. So there's no dive doctors. We're basically our own doctor. And it seems to be quite successful. A lot of people would probably think it's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's worked for me for decades and a lot of the other guys. So, and also the pearling industry uses a lot of oxygen decompression as well. So we do develop a lot of our own tools. So it's quite interesting. I think I enjoy it because it's a little bit sort of cowboy style, a bit like my dad when I was a child, how I was brought up. I'm older now. I'm not as crazy as I used to be, but some amazing stories.
Right, come on then. Tell us about shark encounters. You must have had some.
Yeah, I've had lots of white shark encounters. That's obviously, I work on the south coast of Western Australia, which is probably the biggest population of white sharks in the world.
Yeah.
We work directly in the pathways of all these white shark movements, so there's a lot of that happening. Look, these interactions, they vary a lot. They vary from just a shark passing by to like a shark that is really, really inquisitive. Some of the incidents are very, very like daunting on you. Like I've had a white shark come past me, and it's like looks at me as its eye comes past, and its mouth opens up, and I can just about touch it. And then as it comes past, like the gill plate is just huge, and just opens up the gill plate and just squirts all the water over me, like it's just tasting me. And it's like just moments like that, they just crush you. They just make you feel like how inferior you are with this animal, which is an amazing, beautiful animal. And then it makes you also realise that basically it's up to me to make my actions that I do determines how that animal is going to react to me as a diver. So I'm down there playing this game of I can't run away and hide. I actually have to try and convince this animal not to be interested in me. So,
well, I've watched quite a few of your videos where you just seem to be hugging the bottom, trying to stay calm, lowering your heart rate. That's a mission in itself, just lowering your heart rate, isn't it? Just to try and remain relaxed when really you should be panicking and flapping like mad. Were you in your cage then, or were you actually free swimming?
Oh, this was back in my free swimming days. So I spent most of my diving career free swimming and had multiple interactions. Quite often, lying on the seafloor with a white shark coming straight at me and like lying back and coming over me and almost rubbing its stomach on my mask as it goes by, and then I'm like scampering across to the rocks to try and hide. So I guess what you do learn is you learn a few things, and you don't learn. It's not like you learn it through pure fear. Basically, you're terrified. You've got no choice, so you just do it anyway. But yeah, like hugging the bottom, keeping the habitat to your back. If the shark is confronting you, you can't turn your back and swim away. You've got to confront it back, use your tools. So, you just develop these things and you learn. Just like with our diving, you learn by what happens. Yeah. And quite often you make decisions that you never thought you'd make, but you're forced into those decisions.
Mm. Sorry to interrupt this episode to drop another plug for my Patreon account, but I do spend a good 7 or 8 hours producing, editing and launching each episode of this podcast, and sometimes days on the production of my YouTube videos. So to help keep this content strong and valuable to you, I'm asking that you become a sponsor and a patron of the Are You a Scuba Diver? Fancy a Brew podcast. When you become a supporter, not only will you have my undying appreciation for helping support the podcast, but you'll be able to take advantage of some of the many tiered benefits that come with it, some of which includes official merchandise. If you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, then visit www.patreon.com/fancyaBrew. There you'll see all the different levels of subscription and how to join the Fancy a Brew community. So without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
Is that what you meant by stealth diving?
Well, we just did a recent documentary called Lair of the Great White.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of interactions with white sharks outside of cage diving, so there's no charm and those sorts of things. So what happens is you basically, a shark comes in and it's just interested in me. I'm abalone diving. There's no scent. There's no reason for that shark to be there. So I get these experiences of white sharks that are inquisitive, that want to come and check me out. So then I sort of come up with the idea about stealth diving, meaning how can we interact or see what the shark is doing without it actually seeing us or us attracting it. So we made this documentary recently on Shark Week, which is called Lair of the Great White, and we use a few stealth techniques. Like we use sonar to look beyond the camera lens. We use these view in the blue 24-hour cameras that live feedback surface, and we use these tow cameras, and then we also use rebreathers with ghillie suits and what we call a magnetic shield suit underneath. So in that scene, basically we go down to the seafloor and we're on rebreathers because white sharks really react to bubbles.
Yeah.
They can, they get that sense and all that noise, and sometimes it scares them, and other times it attracts them. So it really depends on their interest. So the idea is to go down to a rebreather. You got that really nice silent, you can hardly hear it, fully stealthed out, hiding in the seaweed and lying like as low and as quiet as we can and studying white sharks. The interesting thing was we had Dr. Craig O'Connell down there on an Arga mask and blowing bubbles, and he's getting circled flat out by this white shark, and we're sitting there, and it's like the shark didn't even know we were there.
Wow!
And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. We're in this environment and being invisible. So yeah, it's actually probably never been thought of in that way, but it's good technology to try and develop and move further with. And I guess for me, being on a tech diver page, these are the reasons why I get involved in tech diving. Not because I'm a real smart tech diver, but because I really want to use that technology to explore.
Right. It's interesting to me that, because at the first week in November, I'm on my first Rebreather course. So I'm really looking forward to, because I'm a bit of an amateur photographer underwater, and everyone I've spoke to has said, to get better at photography, a rebreather will help, because the fish will come in, because they're less panicked by your breathing, the bubbles and whatnot. So I am honestly, I mean, you know how expensive it is. So I was slightly apprehensive, but I'm so excited to get it done and then get back in the water. All this stealth stuff sounds, the next stage, next level, doesn't it? You can get them to come in and not know you're there.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I did my rebreather course, I wasn't exactly top of the class. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's just put on this ghillie suit and this other suit and then like do all this other crazy stuff and then use this rebreather. But we had lots of backup plans and safety divers and that. But yeah, no, it's interesting, and I think another thing with what I do is I do a lot of other research projects and work with archaeologists and so forth. When I first started Abalone diving, we put what we call our blinkers on to go down, and we get around like this and we just chase abalone. But as time went on, I started to look at the bottom completely differently. Because the bottom used to once be land, a lot of this around me worked. So I found my underwater landscapes, shipwrecks, and all these things that everybody else swims past, all because I've just opened up my mind underwater and tried to look at that whole environment differently.
We were watching one of your videos actually the other day. It was about where you found the Herschel, but I think the one thing that sticks in my mind is the sort of tree stumps that are kind of hollowed out and they're all grown around. But I know what you mean, because of how they've sort of got encrusted with this sort of stuff that's growing on the bottom. It's quite easy with that tunnel vision, isn't it, to just sort of see colour rather than see the forms and then try and imagine what it could have been back in the day. Is that the only wreck you found, the Herschel?
Yeah, I've stumbled across lots of wrecks. Yeah. But, as you know, wrecks aren't that easy to find nowadays, especially in shallow diveable depth. The Herschel was the first one that I'd recorded, that had been found. It went down in 1906, so it was not sort of been registered since then. So that was great, and I went out to the museum, and they use a lot of imaging type technologies and that to try and take videos of it, and then we took measurements of the, because we had to identify what it was, so they can use those measurements and images to go back and look at the original plans of the ship, and then we can go, yes, we know what that ship was.
So you didn't just go down and find a nice shiny golden coloured bell then, no, with a name on? Not that easy.
I think a shipwreck's a shipwreck. To me, the treasure doesn't mean everything. It's they come with a lot of history, a lot of trauma and stuff that goes with it, and so and also for divers, there's this shipwreck now that's new, and I think for diving it's brilliant to have a shipwreck in beautiful clear water on the Southern Ocean, and in an area where you've got access, you can actually get to it. So it's great. And,
how did you come across it? Did you get a blip on your sonar and go and dive it, or was it just a matter of course with what you do for a living that you just sort of stumbled across it?
I was just abalone diving, and I was following what we call abalone grounds. Abalone use like gutters and trenches because they eat seaweed and how it just rolls up and down the rocks.
Yeah.
But the shipwreck was slightly down from there in the deeper water. And as I was like searching along, I looked out and I just seen an object, and I thought that's not a normal object. It's not a rock. It's not a piece of coral. It looked different. So then I went out to that object, and then I just kept hopping from object to object, and eventually I just found myself out in 28 metres on the sand line with this massive stern of a ship that is broken off, and it's just like all the old iron ore and and then all these fish and that hang around all covered in corals and sponges. It was beautiful. And then I just rang my mate up from the museum, which I've done other projects with, and I just said, "Is there a shipwreck here?" Expecting him to say, yeah, it's just the same, some wreck that I've always said to him a few times. He says it's this boat, and he said, "Oh, we don't know about that one." I'm like, "Oh, wow." So from there we went on, and it took another couple of years before we could actually organise a proper expedition to try and identify it and classify it as a newfound wreck.
I bet you were super excited when you seen that and like, who can I tell now? I need to get out of the water and tell someone about it.
Like I said, tech diving's amazing.
Yeah.
For me, it's a tool to explore, and I've found a lot of things underwater forests, great white hotspots, these wrecks, and so I've just found so many amazing things, and I think to be able to go diving and look outside that box and really enjoy what you do, and for me, I'm very lucky. I'm working in an environment where there's no humans or nothing, so everywhere you go is almost new all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky, and I'm very humble and privileged to be able to do that.
Well, one of the big interests that fascinates me, short of everything we've just spoke about, is the term expeditions. Because through the army, that's how I got into diving. If you looked at the proper dictionary definition of an expedition, it would be planning, preparation to go away and find some knowledge or increase the knowledge and come back to, with some artifacts or some, you discovered that wreck is what it actually is because of the data that you found. So how much planning and preparation did you go into? Like you said, it was a few years before you actually went back out to discover what it actually was. What did you have to do for that?
I think with most of my expeditions is I've got all these specialist people, archaeologists, maritime archaeologists. We've got all our experts in marine biology, seal sharks. So there's all these people that we collaborate with. So, I guess essentially it's an expedition. It's probably not so much army or military style because that's sort of a specialised team that have all those people. Yeah. So what we do is we collaborate all the experts, and we sort of search out for the best appropriate people to do the job. With the Herschel wreck, it was more about trying to get everybody together. Like it took so long because it's like, let's go out, and it's like, Bill can't make it because he's up doing an expedition in the North Sea or something. So it wasn't until so that's why it probably took so long. Not necessarily the actual planning, but more just trying to get all the players together all at the same time. And our only hold up was just that.
All right. That's quite interesting, though, isn't it? To be able to get those kind of people together, and I suppose you would learn as they would from you. You'd learn stuff from them to increase your sort of knowledge base of how you go about doing that, so the next one becomes slightly easier.
Yeah, well, what a lot of our stuff we do at the end of the day, we'll sit around a campfire at night, and so we got specialists in all sorts of fields, and we all sit around and we have a brew, and we talk. And that's when everybody absorbs all that information in, and there's always an expert, there's always somebody who's really good at everything. And, even in my team that I work with now on the southwest corner, with my team, I always pick out the guy who's the best at something. And you find that there's always somebody good at something. So you just got to utilise your team players and just get the most you can out of those expeditions. I'm not abalone diving at the moment, but when I'm not abalone diving, I've been doing a lot of filming activities. I'm going out to do some pull some what we call shark receivers for another group in the next couple of days. So I've got all these really cool diving projects on the go that I really like doing, and they're really exciting. And I guess the thing is, it takes a lot of time to achieve a lot of these things, and there's a lot of ups and downs, as you know, and you just got to stick at stuff, and you sometimes like you almost got nothing left, and you just sort of is something going to happen, is something going to happen, and then it all happens at once, and then all of a sudden you're inundated with all these projects, and so it's just an up and down ride, and all I just say to anyone is just stick it out, just pursue it and just keep sticking it out, and it'll come.
Are you involved with Sea Shepherd?
No, but I do know some Sea Shepherd people, and they have come out on my boat for the project I'm involved in as well.
Right.
I don't have a lot of involvement other than I do know a few people with Sea Shepherd. But they got a lot of great projects on the go. Like, I honestly support their plastic cleanup. Like that's the one I support. I try to keep away from sharks as much as I can.
And politics.
Yeah.
Nice. So what have you got on for the rest of the day?
No, I'm kicking back. Today's my son's birthday, so I'm just going to go hang out with him, and then I just got to go catch up with some guys that have an Abalone farm, and they're commercial divers, and talk about our next project, which is going to pick up these what we call them VR2s. They're a receiver. They pick up tag sharks.
So are they submersed? So you'll collect them and swap them out every so often to retrieve the data from them? Yeah,
that's right. They download data. Yes, so we can go pick them up. It's just for a local community group and it's going to be a scientific project as well. So it's quite cool. I'm doing my bit like I always do. I'm the diver who dumps in the water and goes picks it all up, and then I handball it over to the guys that know what they're doing.
Gleaming. So are you not abalone diving now because it's out of season, or is it just because you've got other projects on?
Yeah, I just don't have the time at the moment. So I basically got other projects on. I just don't have time to do it. But look, it's actually my favourite job. I love being underwater on my own. It's the most peaceful environment to be in. And I'd go back abalone diving every day. But I got so many projects happening, and that's exciting as well. Yeah. But I think for me to retire and go abalone diving, just lie on the bottom of the seafloor and look around, would probably be the ultimate retirement plan.
Yeah, I suppose as long as you're getting paid from somewhere, work's work, and if you can mix work and pleasure, it's kind of nice as well, isn't it?
It is. As you know, with diving, you're doing the Rebreather course, you've got to invest a lot of money in a Rebreather, and at the end of the day, we want to go dive on our Rebreather, but it's like we also want to make it pay for itself as well. Yeah. So, if you're a professional diver, you have to come up with methods of paying for your tools that you use. Yeah. If you're an amateur, well, then you need to go out and have a damn good job to pay for it. So, at the end of the day, we love it, but it's we got to pay for it.
How have you got more involved with these projects? Is it just a matter of course for you because you've been doing what you do and you've had the encounters you've had and spoke about them in a more public way so people have heard of you, or have you gone looking for these projects yourself?
I think for me, these projects all started for me doing everything for free out of my own time. Yeah. And just getting out there and doing it and not expecting any income out of it, just like, putting my foot in the door and getting involved. I was helping out CSIRO with white shark research back in 2009 or something, and I've been involved in a lot of filming projects. I'm a marine operations coordinator for quite a few films. So it's just more just starting off and just saying I'll do it for free, Yeah,
because that's kind of my interest would be. It's not so much the earning a living; it's being involved in stuff like you're talking about. I'm sure you can see some of the things you're talking about. My face lights up, and I'm actually dead excited about it, which is why I was dead keen to get you on, because I want to be somewhere in the world, perhaps, that there is more going on and have more involvement, but it's just the logistics are so hard, and then to make it pay to be there, it just seems such a big mountain to climb. So this networking that I'm lucky enough to be able to do with this podcast makes you sort of think outside the box a little bit, and how can I get involved with somebody that one day might lead to something else? So I'm not asking for a job, Mark, although it'd be lovely. It would be amazing if you did.
My thoughts on that, go to the mast, climb all the way up to the crow's nest, put your rebreather and your dive gear on and jump over the side into the water head first. And,
make the biggest splash.
Make the biggest splash and you'll be straight in there.
Oh, gleaming. Well, thanks for sharing your son's birthday with me, mate. I appreciate you coming on.
Okay, great talk, Andy.
Cheers, buddy. See you later. Take it easy.
Yeah. Bye.
So that brings us to an end of episode 35 with my friend Marc Payne. Links to all the things we discussed are in the podcast notes. You've been listening to Are You a Scuba Diver? Fancy a Brew podcast with me, Andy the Northern Diver. You can find more scuba related content on my YouTube channel and the link is in the podcast notes. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review. And to become a patron of the podcast, then visit www.patreon.com/Fancy a Brew. There you'll see all the different levels of subscription and how to join the Fancy a Brew community. If there's someone or something you'd like us to discuss, then let us know via our Facebook page. Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.